Good evening, Sun Valley. Great to see you all here this evening. Very thankful to have another opportunity to be able to be here and speak to you all this evening. As you can see, the title of my lesson is Against the Odds. Now, if this PowerPoint looks great and this slide looks great, I can't take the credit for it because I don't even know how to work Canva. So thank Justin for that because I don't know how to work any of it. So if it goes downhill from here, it's because I use PowerPoint. But I want to start off with just a couple of things that would kind of be against the odds. If you know the nursery rhyme, the tortoise and the hare. Now, if you know this nursery rhyme, the hare is boastful and he's prideful and he's arrogant and he thinks that he's going to win this race. And the tortoise says, "You know what? I want to race you." And the hare, scoffs at that. Of course, yeah, go ahead, race me. And he's going so fast and he even takes a break because he thinks the tortoise is way behind. And the tortoise pushes through. But if you looked at this story from looking at a book, and the book says, and it's titled, "A Rabbit Racing a Turtle," what is the probability of you putting the rabbit beating that turtle? DC made a movie of Batman versus Superman. Now, Superman is this invincible character, and Batman is merely a rich man in a suit. But if you were to look at this on a piece of paper, and it says Superman versus Batman, what is your probability that you would put Superman defeating Batman? There's a movie that's called Magnificent Seven. 7 skilled gunmen who go up against about 40 men, and they win. But if you looked at this from a distance, and you saw 40 men circling 7 men, you'd probably think that the 40 men would destroy those 7 men. Against the odds, the turtle would win against the hare. Against the odds, Batman would defeat Superman. Against the odds, 7 men would defeat 40 men. Throughout the Bible, there is a pattern of small numbers and small numbers overcoming big armies. We have Noah, who was the only righteous man, and him and his family were the only ones saved out of the whole world. And during that time, it was approximately a little over 1 million people, and only 8 people were saved. Lot and his 2 daughters were saved in a whole city. 3 people. King Jehoshaphat had 4 different armies coming against him, and he won. Gideon defeated an army with 300 men. David defeated Goliath. And there's many more instances that we can look through, but instances that to a human mind, and you would see this, you would think that the people that had more would obviously be the ones who won. There is nothing impossible with God. This evening, I want to observe the faith of Jonathan and the faith that he had in God. Jonathan had the faith to act. Jonathan had the faith to trust. And Jonathan had faith in God's deliverance. Now, based on just this next slide, it looks like I gave you the answers again. So, you're going to have all the answers again. My apologies. But as we go through this lesson, just know that against all odds, God is able to deliver despite any circumstance. Let's look at the first point, the faith to act. Go ahead and open your Bibles to 1 Samuel chapter 14. So we're going to primarily be this evening is 1 Samuel chapter 14. And we'll start in verse 1. Now the day came that Jonathan the son of Saul said to the young man who was carrying his armor, "Come and let us cross over to the Philistines' garrison that is on the other side." But he did not tell his father. And Saul was staying in the outskirts of Gibeah under the pomegranate tree, which is in Migron. And the people who were with him were about 600 men. And Ahijah, the son of Ahiab, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the priest of the Lord at Shiloh, were wearing an ephod, and the people did not know that Jonathan had gone. Between the passes by which Jonathan sought to cross over to the Philistine garrison, there were a sharp crag on the other side, and a sharp crag on the other side, and the name of the one was Bozez, and the name of the other Seneth. The one crag rose the north opposite of Michmash, and the other on the south opposite of Geba. You see, Jonathan, he takes the initiative. He leaves this campsite where his father is and these other 600 men are, and he decides to go, and he takes his armor bearer with him. It took great courage to go and leave and do this by himself. Most people would say that it's impossible for Jonathan and his armor bearer to go and do this, to go and fight a garrison of Philistines. Let's look at Gideon in Judges chapter 7. If you flip over to Judges chapter 7, and we'll start in verse 2 there. Judges chapter 7, and starting in verse 2. And the Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many for me to give Midian into their hands, for Israel would become boastful, saying, my own power has delivered me. Now therefore come proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is afraid and trembling, let him return and depart from Mount Gilead. So 22,000 people returned, but 10,000 remained. Then the Lord said to Gideon, the people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. Therefore it shall be that he of whom I say to you, this one shall go with you, he shall go with you. But everyone of whom I say to you, this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, you shall separate everyone who laps the water with his tongue as a dog laps, as well as everyone who kneels to drink. Now the number of those who lapped, putting their hands to their mouth, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people kneeled to drink water. The Lord said to Gideon, I will deliver you with the 300 men who lapped, and will give you the Midianites into your hands. So let all the other people go, each man to his home. So Gideon started out with 32,000 men ready to fight. And God says, no, that's too many people. I don't want them to become boastful. So you need to get rid of some men. So Gideon agreed, and he got rid of some men, and it went down to 10,000. And God still says, no, that's too many. You need to bring it down a little bit more. And he brought it down to 300 men. 300 men to fight an army of 135,000 men. Mathematically, the men were outnumbered. I can do that math. But against the odds, they would win that war. Jonathan had the faith to take the initiative to do the impossible with him and only his armor bearer. Does our faith resemble this kind of faith? Do we take the initiative when it comes to God? That when we know the circumstance is greater than us, do we shy away or do we take it head on? Look at David and Goliath. Looking from a worldly perspective, without God in the picture, would David have had the confidence to fight that 9'9" giant? I would say no. But David took the initiative to be the one to say, I will fight that Goliath. I will fight that giant. I will defeat this uncircumcised Philistine. The odds were stacked against him. A 9'9" giant and a short shepherd boy. A giant who was a great warrior, and a shepherd boy who only fought a lion and a bear. Against the odds, David would defeat Goliath. Jonathan knew that God would be there with him and his armor bearer, but he had to take the first step. He had to take the initiative to show that his faith was more in God and not himself. The next thing Jonathan does is he has the faith to trust. Flip over to back to 1 Samuel chapter 14, and we'll start in verse 6. Then Jonathan said to the young man who was carrying his armor, "Come and let us cross over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. Perhaps the Lord will work for us, for the Lord is not restrained to save by many or by few." His armor bearer said to him, "Do all that is in your heart. Turn yourself, and here I am with you according to your desire." Then Jonathan said, "Behold, we will cross over to the men and reveal ourselves to them. If they say to us, 'Wait until we come to you,' then we will stand in our place and not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' then we will go, for the Lord has given them into our hands, and they shall be a sign to us." When both of them revealed themselves to the garrisons of the Philistines said, "Behold, Hebrews are coming out of the holes where they have hidden themselves." What a tremendous amount of faith and trust Jonathan had in God. For him to leave camp from where his father is, to take his armor bearer with him, and to tread towards the Philistines to bring justice to God. The armor bearer is loyal, and he's ready to fight alongside Jonathan. But notice the statements that are made here by Jonathan. In verse 6, he says, "Perhaps the Lord will work for us, for the Lord is not restrained to save by many or by few." You see, the confidence that Jonathan has in God that he is about to embark is powerful. The Lord is not restrained. It means that there is nothing that the Lord cannot do. No matter the number or if it is against the odds. You can read this in Romans chapter 8 and verse 31. But against the odds, Jonathan had the faith to trust God over the number of Philistines that were there. Is our faith mirroring Jonathan's faith today? No, we don't have a whole army that we have to fight right now. At least I would hope not, right? I don't want to fight the Romans right now. But we don't have a huge army. But figuratively, we do. We have armies every day. And we have different armies. People and things that create a lack of doubt or a lack of initiative. But what about when our army is a group of people that we choose to hang around that disrespect God? What about when our armies are the ones that tell us that they're going to threaten to leave if we don't stop? What about the armies that threaten to shut you down despite if you're right? What about when those armies strike you with a sickness? I had a friend whose mom died of a very, very bad cancer, aggressive cancer. And she's been battling it for years and years. And there was one point in 2018 where the doctor said that she would not live to see that next day. Well, against the odds, she made it another year. Months turned into another year. Weeks and months and all these different things, they turned into that next year. The doctors were amazed and said, how were you able to make it this far? You were supposed to die last year. But against the odds, she made it. What about the army of financial debt? What about an army that creates doubt and loneliness? What about an army that says, "You can't defeat us"? You know, I think about that. I think about those shows of the police coming in and storming in and saying, "We have you surrounded. There's nothing you can do." The Lord is not restrained to save by many or save by few. Against the odds of a fierce army against us, there can be confidence and trust that no matter the army, God can beat the odds. The last thing to notice about Jonathan is his faith in God's deliverance. Let's start in verse 12 of chapter 14. It says, "So the men of the garrison held Jonathan and his mother bearer and said, 'Come up to us, and we will tell you something.' And Jonathan said to his armor bearer, 'Come up after me, for the Lord has given them into the hands of Israel.' Then Jonathan climbed up on his hands and feet, and with the armor bearer behind him, and they fell before Jonathan and his armor bearer put some to death after him. And the first slaughter which Jonathan and his armor bearer made was about 20 men, within about a half a furrow and an acre of a land. And there was a trembling in the camp in the field, and among all the people, and even the garrison and the raiders trembled, and the earth quaked, so that it became a great trembling." And then skipping down to verse 23. "So the Lord delivered Israel that day, and the battle spread beyond the Bethaven." God's will was for Jonathan and his armor bearer to attack. 20 men fell with 2 people. God brought a great trembling among the Philistines. In verse 23, it says, God was able to deliver them, Israel, that day. God was at the forefront of Jonathan's mind. But notice what Jonathan says back in verse 9 through 10. He's telling his armor bearer that if they, the Philistines, say, "Wait, we will stand in our place," because that means it's not God's will. But then he says, if they, the Philistines, say, "Come up to us," then we will go, because that means it is God's will for us to attack. Jonathan was not going to do this if it was not God's will for him to attack. But because of the trust in God's will, they were delivered. Does our trust and does our thinking always have God at the forefront of our minds? When faced with a tough decision, is God in our minds? When in distress, is God in our minds? In trials, and financial difficulty, and family problems, and marriage problems, and emotions, and in doubt, is God on our minds? Not only is there a constant thinking of Him, but do we trust that He will deliver through those circumstances? Do we trust that He will deliver through those tough decisions, through the financial difficulty, through the family problems and the marital problems and our emotions and our doubt? Do we trust that He will deliver? Against all the odds, do we have faith in His deliverance in our lives? If we don't have that faith, we may be overcome with pride. I don't need help. I got myself this far. I don't need God. Maybe a little bit of embarrassment. Shouldn't have happened in the first place. So I don't want to seek help. I don't want to lean on God. Maybe a little bit of loneliness. I don't feel like He's here. So why should I go and seek Him? We take God out of the picture when we replace Him with ourselves and thinking of ourselves. Against all odds, God is able to deliver despite any circumstance. I had a roommate in Alabama. This was a long time ago, can't remember. But he was suffering with cancer as well. Well, when I went to Bear Valley, some of the congregations up there wanted me to create a Facebook because they wanted to keep in contact with me. And so I said, oh, okay, I don't really like Facebook. I think it's stupid, but I'll create one. And I created one, and his Facebook page popped up on my page. So I was like, absolutely, add friend. Well, it took a few days. So I texted him. I said, you haven't accepted my request yet. What's going on? Well, then I go on there the same day, and I found another friend that posted about him passing in 2022. And I had no idea. No one called me. No one told me. And that was, my heart just dropped. But you know, he always had a saying, go, fight, and win. Jonathan had to go. He had to have the faith to take that initiative. He knew God would be with him despite the circumstance. Do we take that first step in taking the initiative to do God's will? Or does the circumstance seem too great for us? Jonathan needed to fight. Obviously, 2 men fighting 20 men was a difficult task. But Jonathan knew that with God on his side, who could be against him? But the fight was with God and not against God. Do our circumstances put up a bigger fight than we do? Is our faith strong enough to fight alongside God? And finally, Jonathan received the win. Because of faith, because of trust that Jonathan had in God, God is able to deliver Jonathan and his armor bearer through the difficult circumstances that they were in. Do we have enough faith to know that with God, we will win? That we can win when we fight with God. That we can win the war with God. That we can be delivered by God, and our faith and trust is in Him and not ourselves. Through our faith and trust, we can know that against all the odds, God is able to deliver through any circumstance. This evening, if you're a Christian, if you're not a Christian, maybe if you're not a Christian and you think that it's against the odds for you to become a Christian, it's not. But the first step is being baptized. And we will study, and we will guide you through, and we will help you to show you that with God, anything is possible. With God on your side, who could be against you? But if you are a Christian, maybe you've dealt with some doubts. Maybe you've dealt with some loneliness. Maybe you've dealt with some things that you think the circumstance is too great, and you need help. Maybe you need an army of Christians to help you. Well, in order for us to help, we need to know what's going on. So whether you need to make it known publicly or privately, please let it be known now as we stand and sing.